Welcome to YogiViews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Saucis. Yoga in USA somehow started with Swami Vivekananda addressing the Parliament of Religions in 1893, where he stressed again and again the idea of validity of all religions and their harmony. He was a key figure in the introduction of Indian philosophies of Vedanta and yoga to the Western world, and was credited with raising interfaith awareness, bringing Hinduism to the status of a major world religion. He also was a devoted follower and later representative of the lineage of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, his guru. In modern times, yoga is practiced at gyms and studios, guided by teachers that emphasize the physical benefits of yoga, leaving the mental and spiritual aspects of the discipline to be explored by the students outside of the class. Yet, some institutions are invested in showcasing the integrative approach yoga offers, including the mind, the body, and the spirit. Such is the case of Yoga Bharati, a non-profit organization whose very foundation of yoga classes is to provide health at 5 dimensions of human existence: the physical, the life force level, the emotional, intellectual, and spiritual levels. With the technique of stimulation and relaxation, and with a focus on building awareness, theirs is an integrated approach to yoga geared to be holistic. Yoga Bharati has also made a great leap in therapeutic applications of yoga in association with the Vivekananda Yoga Research Foundation in Bangalore, India, one of the premier yoga universities and yoga research institutes in India, with its rich background in research on yoga's healing effects for various ailments. I have the pleasure of having here with me today Ashwini Surpur and Binta Patel. Welcome to the show. Ashwini is a director of yoga therapy at Yoga Bharati Bay Area chapter. She is a passionate yoga practitioner and therapist who quit her software profession at Oracle to serve the society in spreading the holistic aspects of yoga. Ashwini has completed her diploma in yoga therapy recently from the Indian University and is pursuing her master in Sanskrit. Binta Patel is a senior yoga teacher at Yoga Bharati. Binta is an avid and enthusiastic yoga practitioner and teacher with over 15 years of experience in Hatha, Vinyasa, and Vasishta styles of yoga. It's a pleasure to have you here today with me and with the viewers. And there is a question that most of us and most viewers are interested in knowing, and that is, how did yoga start for you? What was your first experience with yoga?
So my fond memories go back to my first yoga class at a university in the Midwest in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it was taught by this lovely woman who taught the first class, and I knew exactly that at some point in time I want to do what she's doing. I was in my early 20s and said, this is what I want to be doing. And I actually met up with her last year, and just to share with her where my life has gone and how much she's inspired my life on the path of yoga and spirituality. And she shared with me some history about yoga in her life. And she says when she started, there were only 3 yoga teachers in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and today there's over 200. And so it's profoundly nice to hear how much yoga has spread across the US, but to find that in the Midwest as well.
And was your first experience with the body or in the mind, or was it a spiritual experience? Was it all 3?
It was all 3, and the most profound and what stayed with me, and to have me actually continue after moving to California, was my first relaxation experience. And when she actually put us in that relaxation place and she says, let go of the body, let go of the body, sink your body into the ground. For me to actually disconnect and allowing myself to actually dissolve the body and let go was a very profound experience. And in that, magic started occurring in terms of letting go. and allowing the earth to consume me, absorb me, and then bring me back again, rejuvenated. And I saw that I could go at extremely high energy levels, but my mind and creativity arising, and me actually volunteering or taking on higher, bigger causes that I didn't even know or had the capacity to know that I had that. And then signing up my parents, my family, and the community as a whole in my age of 21 at that point in time.
Wonderful.
Yes.
What about you, Ashwin?
I started my yoga when I was 12 years old, which was maybe just middle school. And I lived in a little town in India where there was no yoga teacher. We never knew yoga is to be taught. We attended all these spiritual, lectures, and we went to various ashrams, just holding my mom's hand, and that was the only yoga that I knew. But we didn't even call it yoga. It was just part of life. So when this yoga teacher came and then started talking about yoga and as a practice, I was quite impressed. And so I attended these sessions along with all the other women who were above 40, and one was even at 70s. So I was the one who could do most of the asanas, so they loved me. It was a 1-month session. And after that, I continued practicing on and off until I was 16 or 17, and like any other teenagers, gave up and just moved on until I was 32, when my back started hurting. So that's when I came back to yoga, and Sri N.V. Raghuram, who is the faculty at Vivekananda Yoga Research Foundation, he was visiting. And so he gave me a week's yoga therapy, and I started to feel the difference. And I was so upset that I didn't continue my practice since 16, but nevertheless I started and I continued.
So in a way, in your case, because you were going with your mother or your family to this talks, to this satsang, yours was a little bit more perhaps of a spiritual experience first, and then you arrived to the body in a different way. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I also, my dad used to give me books from Vivekananda, and I used to read them, not understand them a whole lot, but when I was 32 and when I started listening to Sri N.V. Raghuram, that's when it all started coming back. Oh yeah, this is what I had read. It was that kind of experience.
Now from that point to now having founded or created or being part of Yoga Bharati, which is an association, how did that association come to life?
It was interesting. So when I started at 32, I started just as a practitioner, and I had no intention to become a teacher. But then I was with little kids, my 2-year-old, and I was also very busy at my company, Oracle, and my 2 kids. So something with Yoga Bharati and something with these yoga classes gave me such profound connection with myself that I just could not stop myself from getting involved more and more. Although until my son was 8, I did not take up teacher training course because it was quite a bit of commitment. So from that point of view, I stayed out of becoming a teacher and plunging into this whole teaching and getting more involved as a volunteer. But I was practicing constantly, almost every day. I was taking at least 10 minutes of my time, and I would go and practice one little, what we call MSRT, the mind sound resonance technique. It's a practice of just chanting ah, oo, and which are simple sounds, but the relaxation it gives is profound. So that's one practice I held on for almost 6 years. And then when I was ready to take a teacher training course in 2006, I did.
And what's amazing is about Yoga Bharati starting, it was actually brought about because there were a bunch of engineers at Cisco who were, I think, craving and just thirsty for some of the physical and the spiritual aspects of coming about. And her husband was a part of that organization, of the group of young men who were interested in this. And what started out as just a yoga retreat, I think for about 20-some odd folks, turned into something very profound to Sri Raghuramji and saying, let's establish something here. And from that is what's come about to be a 11-year-old organization now. Now very much having programs established in annual yoga teacher training programs, plus public classes that are held around the Bay Area, which are held typically on a non-profit basis, donation basis as well. And then also sponsoring and organizing various different spiritual yoga programs as well.
And have you continued to be related to corporate America or to some of these organizations, or have you somehow branched out completely of them?
Corporate America, I have quit my personal job to get into Yoga Bharati 2 years ago, and I'm thankful I did it.
Yes, but
So,
my question
but-
is, having started with Cisco and, you know,
Oh.
are you still teaching in those companies, or are you still
Oh, I
present there, or
Yes.
have you, yes.
We are. My husband himself taught for full 5 years in his own various companies, not just one company. And then some of, I taught at Oracle, I taught meditation for 2 years along with a friend of mine who is also a Yoga Bharati teacher. So there have been all these Yoga Bharati volunteers who take it to their workplace. And that tradition has continued. It's not, there is no set classes per se. It's just that as they join, they start something, and then if they quit, this, you know how the Bay Area dynamics are, right, with software companies. So people quit their jobs, move on to other jobs, and then things may stop there, and when new volunteers show up, again, things continue. So that's how it has been. There's no one set curriculum for one set company, but people come and go, people start their own, what they think is a class. Sometimes meditation, sometimes pranayama, sometimes asanas. Usually it all goes by the HR policies, the insurance, and if they allow us to do it. I approached Oracle, you know, once it was rejected, the other time it was approved, so it depends. So,
And because you have just mentioned teaching just meditation or just pranayama, and I am sure you are exposed to the fact that most of what is known in the United States is the asanas, the physical aspects of it, and also because particularly these population is sitting for a long time and in the same position, and they are intellectually driven. Is there a preference, or I should say, is there any resistance in bringing in these other aspects of yoga which you're big on, or no, or it's a...
we have not seen. As far as my experience goes, they love it. They love our holistic practice. In fact, many of them come back and say, I have gone to so many studios, I've gone to so many gyms, I've never seen something as profound and as holistic as this is. It's so relaxing. So that's the part they usually like. It's just that if they don't even show up because it is different, then they lost it.
Yes.
Otherwise, anyone who has shown at our door, who has come to one practice, has never said, I didn't like this practice.
And I think what happens when you're doing a holistic practice is that we're opening doors for new things, or we're allowing actually, or giving permission for folks to allow themselves to do these different practices as well, that they would not have allowed themselves to do on their own or with someone else as well. And when they see it being done at a very simplistic level, but having them feel it at a very deep level, they come back rejuvenated. They actually experience it in the moment, that they are able to give us feedback very quickly, and then we see them returning back for another class again as well.
Well, because obviously, as in many other aspects of yoga, is the experience what matters, actually. And if you have the right experience, and if something that you were looking for, then of course you go back to it.
Yes.
And so, what are some of the principles of your offerings? And how do they relate to aspects, because I have read about the 5 sheaths of the body and different things that you bring into the table. So what are some of the core principles of your offering?
Right. So as you mentioned earlier, the 5 sheets, right? Just to mention them again, what are these 5 sheets? The 5 layers of our existence. It all starts at the gross level, the physical, which we can touch, feel, and we know it is here. That is the Annamaya Kosha, or the physical layer. And deep inside is the layer that distinguishes the person who is alive from the person who is dead. The life force. We move, we act, we open our eyes, we blink, we all these actions. So that vital sheath is called pranamaya kosha, the blood circulation, the various activities happening inside and outside. Then deeper than that is the thought layer or the emotional cortex, the feelings inside, the compassion, love. This forms manomaya kosha, the emotional layer. And beneath it, or even deeper, is the vijnanamaya kosha, or the intellect layer. The intellect is the one that distinguishes between right and wrong, between hot and cold, the blue and green. That is different from the feelings. So the yogis were subtle enough to see the difference between these different layers or different ways in which we exist. And much deep, let's say I calm down the body, I calm down the mind, I calm down the breathing is just happening naturally. All of it have transcended. Does that mean I have stopped existing? There is still something beneath, and that deepest level of existence, that the consciousness where I know I am, that is the bliss layer or the ananda kosha, anandamaya kosha, and that is what we consider as the true innermost presence. And these 5 layers of existence, it's important for us to understand and be aware of them. And we have offerings at all these levels.
Exactly. So when we talk about addressing the different 5 layers that we have, we're starting off with the asanas practice and the postures. And so when we're actually moving into the postural levels, we're starting to understanding what are the fingers doing when we're standing in the warrior pose. What's the hand movements doing? And there shouldn't be any movements, but what's the breath about? Where's the leg? What's the back of the arm doing? And then we're going actually in that posture, even if we're sitting in a relaxed position, we're going into the breath layer as well and into the prana, and noticing if there's the subtle feelings that we may be experiencing at the tingling of the fingertips, coming all the way down to the toes as well. And as we silence that prana or coming into energizing it, we're coming into that mind level, and how can we bring that into the subtle level of quietness, and then into that intellect of silence, and coming into even a deeper peaceful level. And so each of those pieces can start occurring through the asanas practice, through the chanting practices, through the relaxation, and then through the pranayama, and then meditation. And so we actually have the students, the teachers actually go through these different practices, experiencing them in an hour and a half long class as well.
And so, even though probably, and if I heard you correctly, you understand that each one of these practices have an implication or an effect in all koshas, in all levels.
That's true.
Is it appropriate to say that asana or the body postures are more addressing the physical, and pranayama is addressing the prana
level? Exactly.
And,
That's correct.
and so forth?
And each of those, exactly well put. So each of those are impacting them. And so what we're wanting to do is get to the subtle level inside, and therefore have that reflect outward. And the quickest that we can come to that inner level and have that project outward is where we get to that place of radiating that being, that light that's within us as well. Now, sometimes we find that it's harder to get to that place very quickly, and so we have to sort of we have to sort of come to that place of starting at the physical level, because that's what we identify ourselves with. And so the asana practice becomes very powerful in that. And we can, even being in that asana, that posture level, we can go into that subtle level of the pranayama, the prana, and quieting that down as well, and coming inside as well.
It's like silencing the crying child. This is what the analogy we can use. When I sit down to meditate, I want to be with myself. The first thing that affects me is my body. I'm stiff, something pains, something itches, so I quieten the physical body through asanas. Then there is all the stuff happening inside, which also is a disturbance. To some extent, even the breath is a disturbance for a yogi who is absolutely want to be with himself. So they breathe a breath per minute, or even lesser than that, so that the breath becomes just easy. And so they quieten the prana, not just the breath, even they don't eat much, as you know. So the digestive system is quiet. The whole, so all of the internal systems are just quietening slowly and steadily. And then comes the thoughts, the emotions and the intellect that bothers us all the time. Our likes and dislikes more than the likes. So that's where you follow yama and niyama, where the ethics, when you love somebody, you can forget about them. When you hate somebody, they haunt you. So basically these ethics to be followed are not for any good of the world outside alone. Yes, that happens too, but mainly that is to be followed for your own good, so that you can silence your mind and then cross all these barriers, silence all these crying children, and what is left is that inner peace. And Sanskrit shloka says the word God is not something to be found anywhere. It's just by negating, by saying neti, neti, by negating all of these extraneous personalities outside, you reach the deepest core within you, and that is God. So who can deny the innermost core of our own being and say, I don't believe in my own innermost being? There is no question of that. So that is what is, that peace is what we call divinity.
How does that divinity include or not that other part of ourselves that is prone to destruction and that is very human? And the reason why I'm asking you is because we have witnessed a number of gurus and teachers who have expressed that we are only bliss, that all the other things are mistakes, and that we should resolve them in order to just access this other part. And I have some concerns that those ideas have misled us to believe that we are not the distractions as well, or integrated. So how do they play? What do you think?
That's a very interesting and a profound question, and it has a lot of, there is a scope for a lot of introspection here to understand. When they say negation, what does it mean? You're not really negating the presence of the changing world, is what we call. The changing world includes body, includes the mind, includes everything that's happening around us. The change itself is permanent, but don't associate yourself with the change. Be the center of the turning wheel. But if you are with the wheel, you cannot get to the center. So you watch the wheel, but be in the center. So there is a difference. When you say negate, we are not really negating the presence of it. We are not denying, but we are not associating with it. We are detached from it. So you be in the neutral gear. That's the idea. So it's all of these gurus who have talked in various ways, whether it's Advaita, the dualism, or monism, which is the Advaita is the monism, sorry, and the dualism is Dvaita. These all different philosophies, and there is also a special monism, which is the Vishishtadvaita. Different ways of looking at the same thing, and they all know it. The sages, what they call truth is one. Sages call it by various names. Ekam Sat, Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti is the Sanskrit saying. So it really doesn't matter how they say it. It's up to us to go inward and understand that. And then when you start listening to all these different versions, you will say, they're not saying anything different. They're just saying the same thing. Buddha never said anything different from Patanjali, though the followers may be arguing about it, simply because it's the war of words. But the moment you go to the truth, it is one.
I guess that must have been one very surprising and amazing thing to hear in that Parliament of Religions back in 1893 when Swami Vivekananda expressed this in his talk, and there are so many records and expressions of how for 2 minutes everyone was standing up and clapping. And but I imagine that must have been because certainly religions, as well as those following spiritual schools of thought or of action, also like to think sometimes that it's just that is the only way. And so it's a great thing to also remember Swami Satchitananda. Right? There's just one light, many rays, but we're talking about the same light.
That's right.
Now, One of the reasons why people come to yoga, and one of the reasons why these bodies are so into the change and so sometimes struggling with the change, is because of stress. We have created certainly a lot of conditions in our lives where it seems that it's more than what we can take. And even though the concept of stress started at something physical, some 40 years ago, now the concept of emotional stress finds that it's exactly the same type of stress and it has the same body implications. What can you tell us about yoga and how yoga understands stress and how yoga reverts the consequences of stress?
So stress, as you said, who is not stressed these days, right? Everybody is stressed. Stress, definition of stress itself in the yogic concept is different from definition of stress that we all understand. We all attribute stress to somebody or something outside. Maybe my child is the cause of stress, maybe my spouse or my mother-in-law is cause of stress. But yogic concept of stress is all about oneself. So the stress is not the situation. Stress is the reaction to the situation, how I react to the situation. And yoga says you have the freedom to react or not react or react otherwise. Kartum, akartum, anyatha kartum. That freedom, human alone has it. And why don't you use that freedom to react differently? I, as a yoga therapist, was giving yoga therapy to two families, two ladies who were both going through breast cancer in this almost similar stage. One family was devastated, the other family was taking it so positively. And so I could see that just because the two women were different, one was positive and the other was devastated, the impact on the whole family was so bad. So it's not that cancer caused so much, it's not that anybody rejoices these events, but how much acceptance you have got and how you are handling with them. That is what defines stress. So what happens when a person is stressed out, right? It is the mind, the speed in the mind. Oh my God, how did this happen to me? Why me? Why does it happen to me? And the repeated thoughts. And that repeated thoughts, the repeated emotions inside percolate into the pranic body, and the hormonal imbalance. The breath is the first thing. You start breathing fast, and then the digestion, indigestion, wrong digestion, over digestion. You either binge eating or you just don't eat, or you cannot digest what you have eaten. All this happens, and that in turn repeated and prolonged exposure to these kind of effects will result in diseases depending on the tendencies that I have. Maybe I'm prone to diabetes because my family has it, or hypertension, heart disease, whatever it could be. So that is the effect of the stress, and yoga is a great tool to reverse this. So we are all basically living like a frog in the hot water. If a frog is dropped in the hot boiling water, he jumps out. If the frog is living in a nice cold water and the water temperature slowly raised until the boiling point, the frog lives there until he dies. So we are all living like that. We are living with stress and accepting it and not even knowing that all our parameters are changing. And that with yoga, we build awareness, we get a taste of healthy body. And then when something goes wrong, we recognize it.
This concludes the first part of a two-part show where I'm interviewing Aswini Surpur and Binta Patel from Yoga Bharati.
How would people get in touch with your organization if they want to do so?
YogaBharati.org, www.yogabharati.org. We have all websites completely up and running. Everything is there, contact is there, classes that we are conducting, the workshops that we conduct, therapy that we conduct, all of that is given in that.
I hope you enjoy our show today. And if you care to let me know, please shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com. I hope to see you the next time.